Welcome to Russar from St. Petersburg, Florida, Kato's personal studios. So happy to finally be here.
Thank you for coming down. It's actually a pleasure to see a face that we always correspond distantly, but here he is. He's in my studio, my home, my house, and we're enjoying it here too.
Because I was attending the ball that you chair, the Russian Heritage Ball, which has been going on for 30 years now. This year was the 30th anniversary. It was a wonderfully exciting ball. Great venue, great people, great music, great dancing, great everything. So
there were
thank you.
356 people at the ball. 356. Could you imagine a Russian ball with so many people? Dignitaries, politicians, celebrities, and so on. So actually, thank you, man. Because
Hey,
you're a
great.
witness, and this is the second year. You guys have to think about coming out here because this ball is meant to celebrate the Russian heritage and something that we all connect with. And don't, everyone's got a reason, but come down here. Although I gotta admit, it is cold here. Then only 2 days afterwards, but we were 80 degrees on Saturday.
That's right. While everybody up there was freezing. So it was a wonderful experience. And the other thing I want to say is, what really also inspired me to come, on top of coming to the ball, is the fact that you told me so many interesting things about the Russian community that has lived here for many years in St. Petersburg and Gulfport.
It's not just St. Petersburg. I mean, there are roots here which developed throughout all these years in 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s. My parents came here in the 90s, right? But there were people already living here. And that's why the Russian heritage was created for this purpose, to preserve the history. Pretty much actually focusing on St. Petersburg, but in reality, it's the heritage.
Absolutely, yes. So this first installment, we're going to be showing you the way the Russian community, Kato's parents' generation, lived here in St. Petersburg area. And then we have some more stuff coming up for you as well.
So we're driving right now on 15th Avenue South. This was a location where you'll find Eastern Europeans, Central Europeans living in here. Some of these houses, I'm not saying all, but some, I should be correct here. Some of these houses were put up as Sears Roebuck catalog homes. Well, they had to have access to a railroad, and so they would ship it down the railroads here. They used to be common here. The railroad was right over here with a whole bunch of their stops here. So some of these houses were actually Sears Roebuck catalog homes. As I started explaining, this was a Eastern European, Central European section of St. Petersburg. Houses were very simple yards, and this is what they could afford. And the houses, nothing compared to what they used to cost back in New York in today's terms, right? $500,000, $2 million, or $100,000, right? Even my parents bought a brand new house for $35,000 in Valley Cottage, New York, with a ranch house, right? And that was in 1968. It was not a destination for people to move down to. They actually moved here. Why? Because it was simple living, cheaper living. They could go fish and get their own fish. I'm just being creative here. I'm trying to figure out. But this became, in the 70s, it started changing. The pensioners were dying, they're selling their houses. This is where our church was. You can still see the cupola still standing here on the top. And this was the Russian Orthodox Church of the 70s here. Actually, the cornerstone is 1955. The church hall here in the back was built already during my time. That is, when my parents moved here, they made it a point to put up a house. And what you see here is this is the small church hall, which they could fit a trapeza and any wedding or funeral, paminki and so on. And they actually started my mom, because when my mom moved here in 96, there was already a Russians moving out from Russia, finding a new life, starting new families here, and they started a Russian school right here. So there were Russian school classes that my mom, along with Zoya and other names, they actually started teaching kids how to speak Russian here. A small little connection here. You can see the old tide, you know. The church has changed hands twice since it was a Russian Orthodox church. And yes, this was the Russian Serbian Orthodox Church. They acquired this land sometime in the 70s to knock down the two houses. There were two houses here, actually. This did not exist. It was very small before. See that pamятник there? That's where there used to be, the Kadeti put up their pamятnik. The stained glass windows, which are not stained glass right now, but the stained glass windows that you see at our new church on 54th were taken down from here. So when you go to St. Andrew's Church on 54th, the cathedral now, St. Andrew's Stratolatus Cathedral, when they sold the property, they sold this church to the other new church, they agreed to take down the stained glass windows, which were dedicated, donated by the families, by the Sestrichество and so on, and they had the names on those stained glass. So it said, well, that's why these are empty, strange windows, not original. The stained glass windows are our church, not used as stained glass windows, but they depict the images of Christ, Theotokos, and so on down the line. This corner funeral home was actually, they used to handle most of from the Russian Orthodox community, because they're just down the block from the church. So they used to handle majority of the Russian community funerals. So here we are at the new location since 2008. The church was moved from 15th Street, where we were just recently, and the church moved here to this location. It was available. It was a nice location to expand the church in a better community. The church, so it started working here in 2008, 2009, and it was named after the Saint Andrew Stratolatus, a warrior, right? He is depicted right here. That's Святой Андрей Stratolot, right? He's a warrior, but defended Christianity. And that's the reason why the church was named in his name. The reason being because the family, Bekmambetov family, who were living at the time in Connecticut, their son, Andrei Bekmambetov, saint. Now, Andrei fought in World War II. He was a pilot, and his plane crashed on the Isle of Man in England, or the greater United Kingdom area. The parents, of course, suffered a loss of a tragedy, lost their son. And the parents want to commemorate the memory. So the church was founded here in 1948 in a garage down in Gulfport / St. Petersburg, Florida. Naturally, they raised enough funds to build a church on 15th Street. Growing out of that area, moved over here. So that's a continuation of Andrei Bekmambetov. Now, you could find a wiki page. Someone created it, very interesting, because he was a known pilot, a military pilot. So there's a dedicated page. There's a monument on the Isle of Man dedicated to him. And I actually tried to connect the dots to make sure that also in the wiki page, there's a church dedicated to his memory as well. where we're standing in today. The iconostas was in the original church from 1948. It came from that church on 15th Street, so it's a continuation. And of course, this is the icon. I don't know, not everybody knows this or not. It's a small little factor, but usually the icon on the right side is connected to the church. This is named after this saint right here. As you can see, slightly different, but still the same idea. Carrying a sword and a cross, defender of the faith. All these, and here's another, right? Here's another icon of Saint Andrei Startelatis, but without the sword. All these icons were donated by family members. So if we go through here, you'll notice all these names, and there's some of them with в память рабы Божьей Параскевы, откроющей Валентины. And these are people who donated something, wanted their names. There's a name tag right over here. There's a name tag right over here. And that's how they collected the money to put the church together, to make it work. And if you remember, I was talking about the stained glass windows. It didn't fit into the architectural drawing of this church. So these are light up, of course. We turn on the lights during the liturgia, right? So glory be to God, Anna Rumps, Sonia Campbell, Vera Zarchinsky, and it goes on. These are all memories. People want to be remembered. Now, naturally, you ask anybody here, Father Igor is probably the last person who's going to know the history behind these names here. But once he's gone, who's going to know these names? Just like these tags here, with these names here, with these tags here, they're all going to get lost. Remember I was talking about Vera Spinola? Here she is. This is Vera Spinola. Bless their hearts. So the church has been growing, and in recent times, maybe not so much with the Russian crowds, more so with the American converts. Since 2021, during COVID times, when churches were being closed everywhere around the United States, actually everywhere around the world, the question was risen here. We're going to shut down, or we're going to remain open. And we agreed, the church members, the church council agreed that we have to remain open. I really pushed for the idea. I said, I'll put the markings on 6 feet apart. It was a checkered situation here, but we made sure that we are going to be still working as a church. Maybe it's a wrong thing, it's a prayer. And we believe we're strong behind the idea of keeping that idea around, that people coming here to pray. There's no reason for them to omit this. During that COVID period, all of a sudden we had a lot of convert people coming in, finding out because the word was out. There's only 2-3 churches open in Pinellas County. We were one of those churches. And people started discovering Orthodoxy by coming here. And so we finally had a new wave of parishioners, of people who have faith in God and curious about Orthodoxy. And that started changing to the point that today we have, don't quote me on this, but we have somewhere between 40 and 70 new converts here. And they're discovering Orthodoxy, and they have been fulfilling. And this is all of a sudden now we have our church services predominantly in Church Slavonic, but also with English liturgy as well. We have beautiful flowers donated. It's probably extremely rare for a lot of churches, but we have a family who likes to always make sure that all the major holidays, and not so much major holidays, is always decorated with flowers. They always want to do that for the church, which we thank them kindly. So again, this is There's a different style of paintings. These paintings, right? Sorry, these icons. And maybe I'm saying painting for a reason in my head, because it's a different style. They were written, icons were written by an American. Maybe not so focused onto the Orthodox. It's not a monk. It's not a priest. But he was trying to copy the style, and it's slightly different. This is traditionally very Russian or very Orthodox. The same. The person who wrote these icons, he was 27 years old when he was writing these icons then. And so that's the altar. Open only now because there's some work going on here, maintenance work here going on. And here we are in the kitchen, the trapeza. Again, the original stained glass windows that came in from there. And this is where we have our lunches. Again, we have our lunches. We have a funeral wakes in here. I can't say there's too many. And with all these converts now here, this trapeza is always full. So this block came from the original church, right? St. Andrew's Russian Orthodox Church. However, 6 years ago, the church has become now officially a cathedral. We have 3 priests here, almost 4, because the 4th one is retired priest. But nevertheless, we are a cathedral, and we make it a point that we are a cathedral here right now. We lost a fantastic Kadagant, Vladislav Markov, passed away on our feast day. The church is going through a rebirth. We have a lot of converts. We have people interested in Orthodoxy, and maybe they can't continue on the spirit, the continuation of this church, which has been considered the Russian Orthodox Church. And if you remember, I mentioned Russian Serbian Church. If you go back into the newspapers of the 40s and 50s and 60s, it was always quoted as a Russian Serbian Church. Thank you for visiting St. Petersburg, St. Andrew's Cathedral, or St. Andrew's Church. Probably most of the time people are still going to remember it as that way. We're driving into the downtown area of Gulfport. Now, Gulfport is a district. It's an area outside of St. Petersburg. It's still considered St. Petersburg, and you can still have it officially as St. Petersburg with your zip code. But somehow, people who live in Gulfport are proud of being in Gulfport, that they're from Gulfport, and thus they want to make sure it's known as Gulfport. When you do online registration, let's say Amazon or something, if you were to plug in just the zip code, often enough, I'm not saying all, often enough, it has it down as, it pops up as St. Petersburg, Florida, under the Gulfport zip code. So this is a section, a continuous section of where the Russian emigre lived. There were so many Russians now that would own real estate that lived here. These were snowbirds. A lot of people here were snowbirds. But the snowbirds preferred to live in condo complexes, apartments. The ones who lived in these houses were not the snowbirds. They actually lived here throughout for the rest of their lives. So we're here in the Gulfport Public Library, and at the time when a lot of the pensioners lived in this area, be it snowbirds or even transplants who actually lived here, Gulfport Library was a focal point to saving the books. And so these would come down here, and the books would be added and added and added on and on and on, to a point where when the pensioners die, what's going to happen to the books? And so the husband, the wife, the children, the grandchildren, whoever it would be, they don't want to lug around the books. They're not going to read them. Majority don't read them. And so they would actually bring the boxes of these here. Here's a box of Russian books. And this, the entire section was literally, this was all Russian books here. And this is the only section that's left. This is the only section that's left. Here you go. This is all that's left. Look at this. They started getting rid of the books at around 2021, 2022. The conflict began. There aren't hardly any pensioners left here. There's a young Russian population, but the young Russian population are not really focused on the reading books. They're focused on internet, of course, and I'm here too. I follow the same routine. Granted, I live with over 5,000 books at home, and I'll never read them all. I have started reading some, but I'm focusing on the books that I'm more interested in, more the documentary, more the history too, right? I read those books. So what happens to these books? Could you imagine the amount of books that have been thrown away? The libraries change. Barnes & Noble, I believe they're closing up their stores everywhere. It's, you know, so what do we do with these books? And in all honesty, these books should be heading back to Russia. Yeah. You know, so what's here in Russian? Мир приключения. Мерседес Костыли. Спецслужбы США. This is nothing. Angelica. I don't even see Pushkin here. I don't see Tolstoy here. Sad. And of course, they actually had Russian Новое Русское Слово. By the way, actually talking right now, I wonder what happened to the archives of the Новое Русское Слово newspapers. They might have an archive. Might. This is where they used to store the newspapers here, the Новое Русское Слово, but unfortunately that's it. You're not going to see it anymore. I'm still curious, just by talking, just bringing this up right now, I'm now wondering, would they house what happens to the newspapers, especially Новое Русское Слово? Maybe there is a collection here somewhere. I got to figure it out. Tita Nadia Kravchenko, when she moved from Washington State to here, she was a librarian here for many years, actually, and she's the one who controlled the Russian books as well. Very interesting thing to think about. Anyway, that's the history of the Russian library inside the Gulfport Library, which used to house, I don't know, maybe 10,000 books here in Russian, and the neighboring colleges and universities that had Russian programs, the students actually used to come here and study and take the books out as well. Here we are. This is the Russian American Club, which was organized in 1973, established in 1973, and the person who donated his house because his wife passed away in 73, and he didn't want to really live here without his wife, so he ended up donating his house to the Russian American Club, and the reason being, he passed away, I think, in 1981, 82. Don't quote me on that, but he died somewhere there furthermore. But there was a need for a Russian community center where they could get together to have their lunches, to have their readings, to share books, have their own library. Video technology came in. So sharing videos of documentaries, of Russian films, of Soviet films, and anything even from Jordanville, anything that was shareable, this was their gathering space. And this is before the St. Andrews put up a trapezная. There was no trapezная there. So this was where they would come down and, you know, hang out as a small little social club. That's where we're going to walk in a second right now too. Here we are in Gulfport, Florida. Became an artsy, ritzy area of St. Petersburg. But back in the day when you're talking in 73, this was far not what you see here today. There was no parking spots here. This was a small little community. It was such a, you know, it had that Russian feeling of where everybody knew each other. Kuznetsov, who lived here, he lived here. This was all living houses with maybe, that was a hotel, actually from Gulfport. That's one of the oldest hotels actually in St. Petersburg too. It's been converted into a bed and breakfast place. But the railroad actually came down here. This is also Peter Dementiev. A branch of his railroad actually came through here. And the reason why it came through here, it was very common. There had to be an end place for the railroad to come. And the end place was right there to go to the boats. And from the boats, they would go to other areas of Florida, right there. That's called Gulfport Casino, which was seriously damaged during the hurricane. Let me check the mail, just make sure we're good. No spam or invoices to pay up. So as we walk here, I made it a point when I just moved down here 9 years ago to make a small little focus on that this is a Russian American community. And so 9 years ago, along with Peter, we put this plaque up to represent and to say that we are a Russian American community house here, established in '73. This is the palm tree that Russian Heritage planted with the connection, the sister city connection between St. Petersburg, Florida and St. Petersburg, Russia. We had a delegation that flew in from St. Petersburg, Russia, and this was planted here in 2021, right before all the conflicts started happening between Russia and Ukraine. We just made it in time. So yeah, picture this as being a house. Kuznetsov lived here, you know, grew up, didn't grow up, but he grew. He moved here during the economy, I guess, times. He chose that it's cheaper to live here than in New York. And I could only imagine, but this would be the entrance, and yeah, you can see we use this as information bulletin because you won't believe how many, because of the connection to the Russian American Club, there are Russians who come here, they find it in Google somehow in the searches, they'll search for what's Russian, and we pop up. So people come here, we receive notes, we receive letters here addressed to us. And so this is like a bulletin board to share. If it's one way to communicate, it still works. Yeah, so we try to, sorry for the U-Haul here, but that's from the night before when we were doing the ball. All the stuff is still packed away. We'll eventually get into it. Plitki, there's also a history behind this actually, because as I mentioned, the pensioners would find reasons to get together and they would have their shashliki here. So the person who actually put this down here is Dядя Misha Valitsky. This is his work. When he moved here, he also was proud of the Russian American Club. Dядя Misha Valitsky, bless his heart, Царство ему небесное. He invested his own time, his own money, his own craft of making this into a small little plashatka, barbecuing here, shashliki. And Dядя Misha used to love doing that. He loved shashliki. He loved putting a hog on a pit, right, and roasting it. I carry that tradition. I still do the shashliki here. There's a grill, actually. we have to understand, that's the damage we had from the hurricane. I've been unable, I can't do everything here. It's very difficult. That's the point, is how do you manage to get people to unite together, to donate their time, volunteer, to put some effort into doing something? Well, I can't do everything by myself. I made it a point that I could do that, cut everything down, but now I gotta get rid of it. It all takes time. So hold up, film that for a second, actually. There's history behind these trees. These are mango trees, or papaya. Do you know, would you know which type of tree that is? I think these are mangoes. And there used to be an avocado tree that didn't last. There's possibly been some citrus trees and so on. Unfortunately, it all dies. Yeah, so here's also interesting. George Gladkovsky, right? Who's not interred, by the way, at the cemetery. I don't know where he is, actually. I did some research. But I guess it was important for George to make it a point that before he goes, he's going to donate this, probably with the steps, with this. He probably donated, and he just wanted to make sure that he's not forgotten about. So cool, right? That little connection there. We're going through the back door, unfortunately so. But this, you can see that this used to be a kitchen when it was a house. It was expanded. We have renovated it with Russian heritage. We actually sunk the money into here. And the Russian American Club continues to thrive. As you can see, we just had a New Year's celebration, Christmas celebration in here. Yes, I'm the one who has tried to decorate, tried to repaint this. I'm interested in preserving the history. And that's why I'm involved with this. These were beige colored, eggshell colored walls. I tried to modernize a little bit. And why are there paintings here? Well, you can see that this is probably the same painter, artist, probably, so yeah, right? And it was painted in 1991. But there are a lot of these small little paintings. They didn't mix and match. They were all different. We had 3 Pushkini. We had 3 Bogateri here. We had other, but just to make it more interesting, we tried to rotate these art pieces around. And here's Kuznetsov, who I told you about. He donated his house in 1973 when his wife died. He died in 1986. And it was because of him that he decided. We had to find this photo. And it turned out that thanks to Nadia Kravchenko, who was born in China, who has been living here, grew up actually in Argentina, that entire flag that moved there, eventually moving to America, Washington State, and then here to Gulfport, Florida. Because my parents convinced her that, why do you want to live in Washington? Come on down here. So they ended up moving here, and it turns out that she knew Kuznetsov, and she had to dig through her photo albums to find this. And this is a small little photo that we had to explode. This piano was donated by Kirsanova Goffman. And it's actually a very good piano. And the family is a well-known name. So we're always changing something, doing different. We finally modernized and got internet in here. We put up the screens. We try to get connected, and we're going to be developing. This is now in the developing stages, how to use Zoom lectures and so on, connect with Russia, connect with other Russian American communities, be it Orthodox, be it not, how to start working with other communities, lectures and such. I'm proud of being a Russian American Club director and the president of Russian Heritage organization. And being the status of the church, we make this all work together.
That was really interesting to see what kind of a Russian community there was down here. We all knew that the city's name was St. Petersburg and it had some connection to Russia, right? But, you know, Peter Demons and everything, we'll talk more about that later. But it was really interesting to see how many people of your parents' generation lived in this community, made a community for themselves over here. And as a result of which you had the Russian Heritage Organization, which still exists to this day. Even the Russian Club still exists to this day. And the parish is actually thriving.
Church, right? And it's growing. So, yeah, you saw, if you got a little bit more time, though, this time around than last year.
Yeah.
So I got to show you a little bit more into details as you all saw. And we'll see more. So, yeah, the fact of the matter is there were Russians here. And not a small community. It wasn't maybe as large as a community up in the tri-state area, but the community did thrive here. Unfortunately, they are all gone, and it's sad to see everyone go, but that's everyone's life. So, Yura, thank you for coming down. You people should consider about coming here to see maybe, well, St. Petersburg. If you haven't been here once, definitely come out here. I'll take care of you. Look me up. As far as the Russian Heritage Bowl, we're going to continue on doing it. The church is going to continue on growing. And there's plenty of places for you all to consider about retiring.
That's right. Please like and subscribe and stay tuned for more from St. Petersburg, Florida.